Ayubowan, Vanakkam.
நியூசிலாந்து நாடாளுமன்றத்திற்கு தெரிவான முதல் இலங்கை பெண் வானுசி வால்டர்ஸ் நேற்று தனது கன்னி உரையை நிகழ்த்தியுள்ளார்.
I can't claim the privilege of being the first MP of Sri Lankan descent. Thanks to the speedy work of the Parliamentary Library, I quickly discovered that privilege belongs to the Honourable Annette King. However, I am the first Sri Lankan-born member of New Zealand's Parliament, and I'm incredibly humbled to be joining a values-based, not to mention enormous Labour caucus.
தமிழ் பாரம்பரிய உடையணிந்து பாராளுமன்றத்திற்கு சென்றதுடன் தனது உரையில் தமிழ் மற்றும் சிங்கள மொழிகளில் சுருக்கமான அறிக்கைகளை வெளியிட்டுள்ளார். அக்டோபர் 16 நடைபெற்ற நியூசிலாந்தின் பாராளுமன்ற தேர்தலில் ஆக்லாந்தின் வடமேற்கு பகுதியின் மேல் துறைமுக பகுதியில் தொழிற்கட்சி சார்பில் போட்டியிட்டு வெற்றி பெற்றவராவார். இலங்கையை பூர்வீகமாக கொண்ட ஒருவர் முதன்முறை நியூசிலாந்து பாராளுமன்றத்திற்கு செல்வது இதுவே முதற் தடவை.
Connecting with the fact that I was now not only a Sri Lankan but also a New Zealander. My family having arrived in 1987, I felt the rush waking up the morning after my mother told me Richard de Soysa's story. Richard was my father's second cousin, a journalist in Sri Lanka killed in 1990 as a result of his courageous criticism of the then government. The cloak that morning arrived like a wave of outrage. Surely people weren't being tortured and killed by their own governments. And if they were, the cloak demanded I do something about it. It was a story and a feeling that began a 27-year journey in human rights advocacy for me. There is still so much to be done for human rights protection in many countries around the world.
மனித உரிமைகள் சட்டத்தரணியான வானுசி கொழும்பின் முதல் மேயராக இருந்த சரவணமுத்துவின் பேத்தி என்பதுடன் நியூசிலாந்து பாராளுமன்றத்திற்கு தெரிவான முதல் இலங்கை தமிழ் பெண் என்ற பெருமையையும் பெற்றுள்ளார். இலங்கையில் யாழ்ப்பாணம் மானிப்பாயை பூர்வீகமாக கொண்ட வானுசி இலங்கை அரசவையின் கொழும்பு வடக்கு தொகுதியில் உறுப்பினரான 1931 முதல் 1947 வரை பதவி வகித்த லூசியா நேசம் சரவணமுத்து என்பவரின் பேத்தி என்பதும் இங்கு குறிப்பிடத்தக்கது. நியூசிலாந்தின் வடமேற்கு ஆக்லாந்தில் ஹாமில்டன் கிரிக்கெட் வீரர் ஜேக் பெசாண்டை எதிர்த்து போட்டியிட்ட வானுசி வால்டர்ஸ் 14,142 வாக்குகளை பெற்று பாராளுமன்றத்திற்கு தெரிவானவர் என்பதும் இங்கு குறிப்பிடத்தக்கது.
But arrived in slow motion with a new kind of inescapable weight. The inch of time and the rush of a new identity was there the morning I woke up after 2 hours of intermittent sleep and looked at the most miraculous thing, our first baby, and then our second, and then our third. The cloak on those mornings carried vibrant new colours I never could have imagined. That inch of time and the rush of the cloak is a marker of the human experience we all share. I look around at the diversity in this parliament, which will serve us so well this term, but oh, as well as our beautiful differences, we share so many remarkable similarities in human experience. During my time in community law, with Amnesty International and at the Human Rights Commission, I've had the privilege of hearing many people's stories. I often think about their mornings, what it might feel like to wake and take on the cloak of parenting and advocating for a child with special needs, or to wake and connect with the prison walls around you. In recent days, I've thought about what it's like for those who wake and reconnect with their health status, with their immigration status, with their employment status. We might not be able to relate to the weight of all the cloaks others wear, but that we can relate to that feeling from the inch of time to the rush of the cloak. It's our door to connection, conversation, understanding, and respect. In this House especially, we have an obligation to consider deeply the impact of everything we stitch to or fail to stitch to the cloaks that New Zealanders wear. Mr. Speaker, there is another experience we all share, and it's something described well through a conversation 2 of our boys had in the back seat of the car. We'd just come home from a concert and the conversation went a bit like this. Elliot, Did you feel it? Luca. Feel what? Elliot. The electricity. What they were discussing was that feeling you get when you hear that special piece of music or you're watching that movie and the storyline and music rise to catch your heart. We've all felt it. Some of us get to feel it often. I've felt it marching with women's rights activists in Nepal and Manila, watching a mum catch her breath with pride as her daughter speaks quietly but with conviction about being discriminated against during a mediation. The electricity didn't seem to stop when I stepped on board the majestic Rainbow Warrior 2 for an interview as a climate campaigner, and it was there, buzzing through a pile of hundreds of letters that sat on the floor of a hotel lobby in Mexico, saved by a former prisoner of conscience, sent by strangers to win him his freedom, and they had. It was there with unhelpful giddiness when I walked in to sit my final exams at Auckland University and then at Oxford. The electricity danced across the room in Johannesburg as young human rights activists talked, cried, and shared visions of hope about the future of human rights. It was there embodying possibility, listening to stories about my great-grandmother, Nasim Sarvanamuttu, the second woman to be elected to the State Council of Ceylon in 1931. This is a feeling we should all have in the work we do and in the relationships we hold. This is the great ambition for all New Zealanders, not only to ensure that we look out for each other when times are tough and we must, but to support and connect people with the things that will bring that electricity. Young people should know that as we address the challenges of the coming years, there is a place for their hearts as well as their heads and their hands in the future of employment. When I was a young person, I went to hear Dame Kath Tizard speak at a women's rights conference. She talked about visiting a primary school where a 5-year-old boy puts up his hand and asks, "When you were young like us, did you want to be Governor-General?" And she replied no and asked him, "Why do you want to be Governor-General when you grow up?" To which the little boy spat out, "No, I'm not a girl." While Dame Kath was New Zealand's first female Governor-General, to this little boy, she was the only one he'd known. And the story has always reminded me that not only can great change happen in one generation, but time and time again, it does. And there is much that still needs to be done. We have an obligation to continue to address racism and discrimination.